Welcome back to Booze and the Rocks. My name is David Edwards, and today we are going to use these to make the Milwaukee Old Fashioned, aka the Brandy Old Fashioned. But first, this. Before we start, this request comes to us from RC Snap-On. He said, I am originally from Milwaukee, and my go-to drink when I was growing up was an Old Fashioned. So RC Snap-On, here you go, a Milwaukee Old Fashioned, aka the Brandy Old Fashioned. Now the history of the Old Fashioned can be seen in my first cringeworthy video with, I'll link that right up there. But let's get into the Milwaukee Old Fashioned. And in the 1890s, Wisconsin and Chicago were very competitive in pretty much everything, especially industry. What was also going on at this time was a blight in Europe that made it pretty damn near impossible to get brandy. So a Californian company called Korbel decided to make an American brandy and sell it at the World's Fair. And in 1893, when Chicago held the World's Fair, they were there. Now the World's Fair was considered one of the greatest things ever, and no matter where it's held, some awesome things seem to generally happen. So Chicago was impressing everybody at this time with, light bulbs, electricity, and stuff like that. And there was also a group from Milwaukee at the fair doing their beer thing, which was, in all honesty, they're pretty good at. Now, many of these individuals were of German descent and they loved brandy, which of course they couldn't get now. So Korbel began pouring the classic old-fashioned whiskey cocktail using brandy, and the German crowd from Milwaukee took to it in a big way. Now, those individuals brought the idea of the Brandy Old Fashioned back into Wisconsin and made it their very own. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the Milwaukee version of the Old Fashioned. And we're going to build this directly into our rocks glass. And of course, the first thing we need is 2 orange slices. And I'm gonna cut a couple pieces right now, and because one for my garnish and stuff. So we're gonna take one and we're gonna cut it in half, and we're just gonna drop it in there. Now, one of the other things we also need here, or the next thing we need, is 2 maraschino cherries. And that's okay if we get a little bit of the syrup in there with this, because that just adds to the flavor. And next, but not least, we require a sugar cube. Now, I'm using a raw sugar cube, and you could use powdered sugar, or you could use also a simple syrup. However, let's do it the original way with this. Now we need 3 dashes of a bitters, and I'm gonna use my Angustora bitters here. And just the other thing that we need is a little bit of water. Now I'm going to use a bar spoonful of water. And the reason we're doing this is just to help break down the sugar cube, okay? So the next thing we do is the muddle. Yes, that's right, our muddle. And what we're gonna do is we're actually going to muddle the fruit and the sugar cube, and we're gonna break it down till it's pretty much watered. But what you don't wanna do is you don't wanna get the pith, or what they call the orange peel, because we wanna make sure that we don't get the bitterness out of the underside of the peel. Now, some people will actually strip the orange of the peels, okay? But we don't really wanna do that. So the next thing we're gonna add, a couple of ice cubes, because ice is awesome. And you gotta have good ice in a drink like this, okay? But we need 2 ounces of brandy. Here I'm gonna use St. Remy's XO brandy, okay? Listen to that. And this is a very gorgeous brandy, and I really, really like the color, the smell, the aromatics that come from brandy. So you just can't really go wrong, okay? Now the next thing we wanna do is we wanna give it a bit of a stir. And we're just gonna stir it to incorporate the juices and the sugar and everything. And it's just gonna give us flavors all the way through. We're not just gonna get stuck with a little bit of flavor. Now, the other thing we need, or it calls for, is a 7-Up or a Sprite that we're gonna use to top this up with. And this just adds a little bit more sweetness, and it gives us that that gorgeous effervescence that we like. Okay, so let's get into this. Our garnish, of course, is a piece of orange. Now we're going to use another maraschino cherry, and we'll just stab it like so. Of course, you can't see me doing any of that, and here we go. This is quite possibly the worst looking garnish I have ever done. Well, it's not the worst. We can look at one of my last videos because that's pretty bad. So here, we'll do this. We'll get that. It looks almost nice and pretty. And it smells good. Go into the comments and leave me a description of what kind of brandy you would use. What kind of brandy you prefer to use for any of your drinks, especially this one, right? Let's give it a taste. Give this a bit of a stir. Jam all this fruit back in there. Oh, that's really good. I can see why Milwaukee and Wisconsin loves this drink. The brandy is well incorporated with the fruit, the sweetness from the sugar and the Sprite, and it goes together really, really well. I recommend trying this. If you're not from Wisconsin, definitely make a chance. I'm going to put the ingredients in the description down below. And if this is your first time to my channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification button. That way you get notifications every time we create a new video. But if you didn't like this video, you didn't find it entertaining or informative, hit the thumbs down button twice, and we'll see you next time. I'm going to put the description of the drink and how to make it in the description below. I'm having problems, as you can tell. All right. But if this is your first time,